Hi everyone, welcome to FabForge 5. It's good to see you again. We design and build fun and unusual things, and we always learn something new along the way. We're going to start a new series today on Fusion 360 prototyping, how to prototype and design in Fusion 360. Today we'll look at the combine function. Simple function, really powerful, often forgotten. See you in a bit.
FabForge 5.
So here's a LED nightlight, pretty handy, plugs right into an outlet in the wall, has a small photo sensor on top, so it only turns on at night. Nice little LED light here. It's a great little light, but it's a little bit too bright. I want it just to shine on a step that's down below it and not light up that whole part of the room. So I'm going to design a small hood that just fits over like this, maybe comes down about this far to direct the light downward onto a step and not out like this. It's a nice square shape. We want to make sure we don't cover up the photocell. So let's build something in Fusion 360 and we'll 3D print it. First, we'll actually make a volume that's the actual nightlight, and we're going to use that in an interesting way to cut out the volume of our hood. So we'll start by just doing a sketch of a rectangle. I always like to start at the origin just to keep things consistent. And we're going to make it 75 by 75 millimeters. I switch between millimeters and inches depending on what type of part I'm making, but in this case, millimeters seems to work best. Okay, we'll finish the sketch. And now we'll extrude that into a volume. So we're going to go up 14 millimeters. That's the thickness of our nightlight. So this is our nightlight right here. Now I've made it a body. I'd rather have this be a component. There's different philosophies about that, but I'm used to components and the way they organize themselves. So we created a component and we'll call this the light. And just to keep things straight, let's color it. So we'll say appearance. And I'm going to make this white because the nightlight's white. Let's see, right there. There we go. All right, that represents the volume of our nightlight that we want to cover with our hood. So now there's an easy way to do this. So I could design the hood from scratch. It has lots of different features and cutouts I'd have to do, but it's easier to do it this way. So I'm going to make another sketch on the top face of the nightlight. We're going to do a center rectangle, and I'm going to place it in the center of this face and this face right there. And I think I'll make it probably an extra 2 millimeters on each side, which will make it, I believe, 79 by 79 millimeters. So now I've got that sketch. Now let's turn off that body. Now we're going to extrude this downward. So I'll take that, and I want to grab also, by holding the shift key, this extra ring right here. So I'm extruding both of them. Did I get them both? There we go. And we'll extrude down minus 14. And we're going to make a new component. All right, there. Okay, now we'll call this component our hood, just to keep track of things. All right, so now if I turn on my light, you can see it fits right inside there. It's the same thickness. I need my hood to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to add another 15 millimeters to it. There we go. So now it looks like that. Okay, now I want to make a cutout now for the hood part that goes something like this. So now I'll do another sketch here. do another center rectangle. And this time, of course, I'm going to hit it right there in the center. And now let's make that something like what? Let's say 70 by 50 maybe. Yeah, it looks about right. Say finish sketch. All right, so now we've got this potential cut out here. So I'm going to cut this all the way back, and we'll say minus what? Something like 75. So now we've got kind of a hood shape for ourselves. Now I don't want this to extend all the way to the bottom of the nightlight, obviously. So what I'll do now is extrude it maybe minus 30. Let's see how that looks proportionally. I don't quite know how big I want it to be. Not quite that much. So let's extrude it 5. Let's see how that looks. That seems about right. All right, so you can see what's happening here now. I've actually got some interference. So my nightlight is interfering with the hood. So it's overlapping. So now I'll use the combine function. This is what I love doing. So you go modify, combine. Now combine doesn't just combine parts. It can also cut parts for you. So I'll select my target body. I'll select my tool body, which is this. Now I'm going to say cut and keep my tool. I don't want to throw away my nightlight. I want to keep that. I'll say OK. And now watch what just happened. If I turn off my light, now I've got a nice void made for myself where the hood fits right over that and sits on top of my nightlight. That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. Now for the top, I probably don't need this little recess, so I'll extrude that back to here. Looks a little better. So now when I put this on my nightlight, it'll basically sit on these little rails and have a nice fit. Now remember, we had a photocell on the back of our nightlight, so we need to cut a little notch for that so we don't cover it up. So we'll say another sketch. We'll again do a center rectangle. I often use different types of rectangle sketches, but in this case, center rectangle is working well for us each time. And we'll make this, let's say, since we're going up, we'll say 28 by 20. That should do it. And now we'll extrude this right through the hood. When you extrude negative through something, it cuts it, right? So there we go. So we'll turn our nightlight back on. So now we have a nice little gap for our photocell. We've got our hood. It looks pretty good. I don't necessarily like sharp edges, sharp angles. So I think I'm going to chamfer these outside angles. I'll select all three using the Shift key, or right click, not chamfer, let's say fillet instead. Let's see. Fillet, and we'll say 5 millimeters. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I like that. It's nice and smooth. And let's fillet these edges as well. This one and this one. Fillet those, and let's say 3 for those. How does that look? Pretty good. So I just want to check the corners and make sure I've still got enough material there. That's great. I've Got a nice hood that sits over. It should shine downward, we hope. And that should do it. So there's our hood. Let's turn off our nightlight. And our hood looks like this. All right. So we'll go ahead and save that. And then we can generate a STL, save as STL. Then we'll import our STL into our Prusa slicer. That's our next step. All right, here's our hood imported into our Prusa slicer. Now you can see it takes a guess at which face should be on the build plate. But in this case, I want this face to be there. So you just click this icon, click this face, and it rotates it just like that. And that's how we want it. All right, so there's our part. Now we'll go ahead and slice it. We'll set our print settings. I don't need a lot of horizontal shells. I always default this down to 2 for a prototype. And I'm doing basically a draft. So I'm doing a 0.3 millimeter layer height. That's just fine for me. For infill, this is going to end up mostly being solid because it has such small volume. But for the infill, I'll stick with 20%, a grid pattern. We don't need a skirt or a brim, and I don't want any support material, so I want to make sure I don't have that. All right, we'll go back to our plater, and now we'll slice it. And there's our sliced part. So we can take a look and see how this looks. Let's go all the way down to the bottom, and this simulates the build. So you'll see it's doing some infill for the bottom, starts building the sides for us, comes all the way up, just like that. All right, so now we'll go ahead and export that G-code to an SD card. We'll load it onto our Prusa i3 Mark III printer and get it cranking. While we're waiting for our 3D print, let's do another quick design using the combine function in Fusion 360. Let's take a look at a more complex shape. Here we have a hobby servo. It's got a lot of features in it. Now normally these servos will be mounted on this plane. It's pretty simple that way. But let's just say for whatever reason we have an application where we need to mount it on the top plane. Now in this case we've got to deal with some different flanges and gussets here and a pretty complex shape. Plus we want to make sure we have the mounting holes in the right place. So we'll use the combine for this function. So let's go ahead and create a new sketch, a new part. It'll be our mounting plate for our servo. We'll pick the horizontal plane. Do a rectangular sketch of, let's say, about this size. There we go. Now just extrude this. We'll say 10 millimeters. Now we've got a nice mounting plate. Now for this mounting plate, we ideally want to have the correct mounting holes and the correct voids in it to mount the servo nice and snug. If we had to do this the manual way, very complicated. But in this case, we'll just go ahead and use our combine command. So we'll select our mounting plate. And now for our tool bodies, we want our servo, but we also want our rubber grommets because they'll play a role in this as well. So you can select as many bodies or components as you want for your combine. And now we're going to cut, and that's the difference here. You could join it, and that would be fine, but I find the cut command to be fantastic. And we'll keep our tools. That way we don't delete our servo once we've made the cut in the mounting plate. Click OK. And let's see how we did. Turn off our servo. And there's our mounting plate. So now we've got a nice impression. Our servo will fit exactly in there. Now we've got some mounting holes we need to make. So obviously we could take this, do an extrude, and slide that right through and cut out our mounting hole. So now our mounting holes for our servo will be exactly in the right place. That's the usefulness of the combine command. That's enough designing for now. Let's make something. Let's start our 3D print. All right, we finished our 3D print. Here's our part. Let's see how it fits on our little LED nightlight here. So the nice thing about Fusion 360 is that we use the combine function and we basically set up a component that's the exact size of our nightlight, which we use as a tool to essentially mill out our 3D part here in Fusion 360. Let's see how it fits. And there you go. It's a perfect fit. You can see it fits nice and tight on the sides. We have a notch for our photocell, so it can be automatic turn on, dark and light. And then you can see the front. So hopefully this will work. I was looking for something that would kind of shield most of the light from the nightlight, but give a little down, down spout of light here to cover some steps. I think it'll work just fine. And it's a nice and tight fit, but it also slides right off if you want to. So that's the beauty of using Fusion 360 with the combine function. A lot of people use it to combine two parts, but if you use it as a tool to cut a part, you can mill out a very, very nice shape like this. And you saw a better example in Fusion 360 of a much more complex shape. So it saves you a ton of time. All right, that's where we are. We'll come back and do some more prototyping in Fusion 360 videos. Please like and subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I upload a new video. And until I see you again, please take good care of each other. See ya.